My name is Carrie Hayes, and this is Angry Dead Women.
Carrie, how are you?
Well, I'm ready for some company. I'm ready to
Well,
talk about community, and I'm ready to talk about which group of people most influenced your creative life.
a friend of mine taught me bass guitar, so I played the bass for a while. Then I got involved in later in life, of course, musical theater. So
Mhm.
then I started to be able to sing through that, get my performance chops involved, and
How old
that's
were
a
you when you
whole.
started doing musical
Oh
theater?
gosh, I was in my 30s, late 30s,
Okay, so you were fully grown and old
maybe
enough to
early
know better.
40s.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. But what I found about community theater is talk about community, and I'm sure you know from your background,
Yeah,
it brings people from all walks of life together to do a performance.
right.
So you have doctors, you got lawyers, you got store clerks, you have every demographic comes together to
Yes,
do a show,
yes,
and I found that to be just wonderful.
right.
So that was a sense of community, really. And
What
then,
was your favorite show
oh gosh,
that you were in?
Three Penny Opera, maybe.
Oh, did you do Three Penny Opera?
Yeah.
Ah, that is a terrific one. Who did you play?
Oh, I don't even remember.
Were
I
you in the
never
so
took
you were in the chorus, you're one of the gangsters, I bet.
Yeah, I was one of the gangsters. I don't remember the names. It
Right,
was so long
right.
ago.
It's a
But I
wonderful
was all
show. It's a
oh,
it's a really
it
great
was
show.
fabulous.
Yeah.
It was wonderful. But I did a lot of Gilbert and Sullivan shows.
Oh,
I don't
right,
even remember most of them.
right. That's
HMS.
incredible when I think how Three Penny Opera has to be 100 years old by now.
Oh, easily.
When you think
Bert
about
Tolliver.
that, and you think about how old Gilbert and Sullivan are, and these shows stand the test of time.
It's
It's
amazing.
incredible. And what's
Yeah.
amazing is people in community theater are more aligned and unified than pretty much almost any endeavor except baseball, I think. I mean, everyone understands that they have to have a common purpose and
Right.
that everyone is as important as each other.
Yeah, yeah. You're right. It's truly a team effort.
Right.
And and a lot of rehearsing, a lot of practice, and everyone's got to get their stuff together and you got to deliver on the day of performance.
Ingenue and the props guy, the costume lady and the
There is no
juvenile,
there
everybody
is
is
no
important. Yes.
exactly equally in my view,
Mhm.
right?
Yes, yes, yes.
So as time went on, a friend of mine at work wanted to pull together a band for work for year 2000. We wanted to celebrate some IT significant IT accomplishments we did in preparation for year
So you're doing the
2000.
Y2K band.
Right, right. So we pulled a bunch of people that we knew can
Right.
perform
Uh-huh.
together, and I was still singing on my own. I wasn't really doing anything, and we ended up forming a band that to this day, 24 years later, is still performing.
That's
So
extraordinary. This is the Chain Gang, right?
the Chain Gang, right?
Yeah.
The Chain Gang Band.com.
Mhm. Mhm.
so we're still doing that, but and then an offshoot of that, this is how community is interesting.
Right.
So there was and I know we've talked about this offline, a dear friend of ours, John Regan, who used to
Yes.
perform with Peter Frampton for 30
Mhm.
years. And he was just a regular guy, lived in Wappinger Falls. He's just like you and I, just a regular
Right.
guy. That was his business. We ended up being friends with him, and one of the things he did was almost every day. I didn't do it every day, but they would meet for coffee, and he would just bring a bunch of friends together in the morning, just talk about life.
Mhm.
Talk about changing an oil tank, like what I'm doing, right?
Right. Right.
Or whatever. We would just talk, and for an hour and a half, 2 hours, then go home. So now,
That's a
unfortunately,
perfect way to
John,
start the morning.
it was great over a cup of coffee, right? Dunkin'
Right.
Donuts, all right.
Right.
John passed away this past April, and really, Peter Frampton actually flew in for his funeral.
Mm.
John was a wonderful guy, and he only surrounded himself with like people, right? So it was nice to be in that community of what he thought to be good friends, and it was really
So
wonderful.
generous spirits,
He was, yes,
right?
he was a very generous soul himself.
Right.
And to this day, I mean, John's been gone, what, April, it's 5 months now,
Yeah.
and we still get together for coffee. So
That's an amazing tribute to him, isn't it? That you all continue to meet.
it is, it is. John
Mm.
was truly once in a lifetime friend. I can't say that about me. I mean, friends are friends are friends. He was different. He was,
Right.
just a generous soul.
Yeah.
And knowing what he's done and what he accomplished in the music world. This is a guy that played with the Rolling Stones, by the way.
Right.
He
Right.
played with a lot. John Waite. He's played with them all.
But what's interesting that what you're saying about him is that he brought people with him or to him and along with him, right? I mean,
Yes. Yes.
that's the whole thesis of today's show. Which is about community because in a vacuum, we're not much good to anyone. But and then we may
No.
have like solo contributions that we make, but really, I think the secret sauce is how we affect each other and
Yes.
how we inspire each other to be better or to do great things or to try different things and I think that's what makes a person kind of magical is when they
Yeah.
can do that.
Yeah. Boy, you picked really diverse uh, ladies of history here.
Thank you. Their only unifying thing is that they be dead, they be women, and they have a reason to be angry. That's it. So
I
and
don't see the
also
angry.
about those gals. Okay, this is the one thing I didn't talk about with these gals is they all were instrumental in particular communities. So Inez Milholland was instrumental in the suffragist movement and she brought the suffragists together.
Yep.
Ann Shad, she was instrumental in the publication of this newspaper, this abolitionist newspaper in Canada, and she brought people to freedom. So that's all about community. And then Dr. Wu was part of the community that was the Manhattan Project. So these were all people who did not work in a vacuum. They existed with and for others. Okay, so Milholland. Now you say Inez, I say Inez. What is the correct? How do
I,
people
you
say this
know,
name?
I don't know. I only say Inez because I think it's the traffic lady on Channel 5 is spelt the same way, and they call her Inez.
Oh, well then, if it's the traffic lady's name,
Gotta
why
be.
shouldn't it be our suffragist's name?
Yeah, yeah. I could be.
And so about Inez Milholland,
Hmm.
one thing that was interesting about her was that she only lived to be 30 years old.
Y- Did they have cause of death on there?
Yes, pernicious anemia.
Really?
Yes. What I was going to say, one thing that I found fascinating about this gal is that she was an attorney
Most of the women you selected, except for the
for the
physicist,
physicist.
were
Yes.
attorneys. Yes.
Why do you suppose that is? Because they didn't mind wreaking a little havoc, I suppose.
My guess would be is because a little knowledge of the law probably doesn't hurt if you're going to wreak havoc. That's
Right.
my
If you want to
that's my
change the
guess.
law, if you want to change the law, you should know the
No,
law.
the exactly. All right, what you
Right.
can get away with, what you can't, what buttons to
Right.
push.
And she was a fearless leader of the suffragist movement and died in 1916. Was it 1916?
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
it
it was
was.
1916. She died from anemia, but also brought on by exhaustion, leading the cause. My second gal, Ann Shad Carey,
Yes.
was among the first Black lady lawyers in North America. And I believe she was the first Black woman to be a newspaper publisher in the year 18, I think it's 55 in Canada.
Yeah, I noticed. And by the
So,
way, I did a little look up on her, and
yeah,
I saw her picture,
right.
and I have to say, what the name of this forum is? What, Angry Dead Women?
Oh, yes.
She doesn't smile. She looks very angry in her picture, in my
Well, and
opinion.
she is quite dead, actually. So it's been a while.
Yeah.
Um,
But
uh,
yeah, I know. In fact, let me put my glasses on here.
right.
I have it up in front of me here. So yeah, she was a conductor in the Underground Railroad as well.
Yes. Yes. And she said we should speak less and do more.
I wish people today would heed that thinking.
That's right. And it was only last month that she was immortalized in the International Archives and the Canada Memory of UNESCO's Memory of the World Register on the 200th
Oh,
anniversary of her birth. So she was born in 1823.
my
That's
gosh.
pretty incredible.
Yeah.
I mean,
So
when you think about people who have everything not going for them on a societal scale or level, and then to change the world, at least for the people whose lives that they touch, whew, that's pretty incredible.
yeah, you wonder sometimes, was it their was it deliberate? Was it happenstance that it happened?
Right.
Certainly they did some amazing things step by step to maybe get there, but you got to wonder sometimes, was it accidental or was it deliberate?
It's probably a mixture of the two.
Yeah.
Like there's no such thing as a coincidence, I think somebody says. But at the same time, this sort of like random happenstance, and then also the virtue of her upbringing or her having decided to become an attorney or the newspaper publishing or what have you. I mean, I am ashamed to say that I've only become really fascinated by game changers in the last decade. I was so oblivious to all of this before. I just sort of took it for granted that people did extraordinary things
Is
before.
that because of your interest in writing the books that you took that view or that interest in it?
What an excellent question. Maybe. I don't know. Or maybe it just, after being on the planet a while, you see how really difficult lots of things are.
Well,
When
you
you're younger, you don't think about how them being difficult. And if they are difficult, well, then you say, oh, well, then I'm not going to do that.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right?
Right, right,
Oh, I'm
right.
not going to do that.
The
It's too
hell with
difficult. Yeah.
it.
Climb a mountain? No, I don't think so.
Well, let me just, if you don't mind, I'm going to cross back into the book a little bit, the first book.
Okay.
I remember I asked you what made you write the book, and then I think the answer you gave me was an interesting one. You said it found me, and
Oh, yeah.
I don't remember your logic behind when you said that, but I'm asking the question because is the interest in some of these ladies that it all feed into the it found me answer. I don't know, but
Yes. The answer is yes. Yes, it did. Yeah. So the material sometimes, yeah, something will find you or you'll come across something and then it will haunt you
okay.
and it won't let you go. There's so much in history that is, you can see why people don't want to see history. But at the same time, we need to peel away the layers so that we can acknowledge our history because otherwise we keep repeating our history.
Yeah, I was just going to say you have to acknowledge it happened
That's right.
to learn
That's
from
right.
it, hopefully. Yeah, yeah. It's funny. I never took an interest when I was in school. I mean, social studies, history classes, that was the last
Right.
class I wanted to be in.
right.
I just, and it wasn't because it just didn't interest me.
Or the
But
teacher wasn't bringing it to life for you. Right.
perhaps, but I like science classes. I like
Hmm.
math. I like, all that stuff. I ate that stuff up.
Right.
But it's interesting now. You'll find me watching the History Channel because now I have an interest in it.
Right. Right. It. All of life is so
Yeah,
breathtakingly fascinating,
it
isn't it?
is. It is.
Okay, so now let's
It
go
is.
to our third
Back
angry
to normal.
dead
Yeah.
woman.
Well, so how do you say her name?
I'm not very good at it, and I'm hoping to God I haven't deleted her from my search. There she
I I
is.
I want to
Chien
say
Shiung Wu.
Chien Shiung Wu. That's what I was going to say.
Mhm,
What
mhm,
amazes me about this young lady
mhm.
is that, first of all, this was, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have known anything about this. The Manhattan Project. I mean,
Yes.
as far as, you never heard of a woman scientist in that level of experimentation going on, you know?
No, no, no. And you think about um, her journey. She was born in Shanghai and raised in a small fishing village, and she ended up working and teaching at Columbia University. I mean,
Yeah, well,
that's quite the journey, is it not?
no, it doesn't get
So
any
after
180
graduation,
degrees than
I'm
that.
reading this from the NPS.gov. After
um,
graduation, uh, she worked in a physics lab in China, and her mentor was another woman working in physics. And
uh-oh,
it
you
was her mentor
froze.
who encouraged her to go to the United States. So I just, it just, it's so humbling when you think about the chops somebody would have to make these changes in their life.
Yeah, particle and experimental physicist.
Right.
Th-
She was the first woman hired as a faculty member in the physics department at Princeton. Shortly afterwards, in 1944, she took a job at Columbia University, and that's when she joined the Manhattan Project. Can you imagine?
I,
All that testosterone and this woman. Incredible.
yeah, you don't see any photographs of her anywhere, surrounded by all these scientists. It just, at least I couldn't find any.
Right.
Um, but it just blows my mind, as you said, how you get from one extreme to the other, and what steps did she take to get to
Yes.
that level?
And to how to clear your mind of all the nonsense that tells you you cannot do this. This will never work. This will never
Yeah.
happen. How do you how do you clear your mind of that stuff and then just move forward?
In your opinion, what do you think was in her psyche to go from a fishing village to the Manhattan Project?
I think it's passion. You create like when you asked me about the book and I said that these characters found me, physics must have found her. And she had a natural brilliance for that discipline and a natural talent, and her
Yeah.
brain danced to that kind of music. And enough that with the right teacher, she was encouraged to leave her family and go halfway around the world, or almost all the way around the world, and start a new situation, and then to go from there over to New York. I mean, I think that when people do something like that, their own personal limitations become less significant, you
But
know.
but there's one other element here. As you were giving the answer, I started thinking.
Mm,
So, I mean, she just didn't knock on the door of the Manhattan Project and say, "Hey, I want to be part of the team."
Guys,
Somebody,
let me help
some,
you out.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Somebody had to take notice of her
Of her
and
genius.
recommend her or pull her
Right,
in.
right, right. And good is good.
So I'm assuming it was a
She
man.
didn't get the Nobel Prize that her colleagues got. Her colleagues shared in a Nobel Prize for parity in physics, and I don't know what that
Yeah.
means. And she did not get that because she was a girl, not because of any other reason, I think.
Hmm.
Um, but I think when the work speaks for itself,
Oh yeah.
that there is no prejudice in terms of your colleagues. You know, brilliance is brilliance.
Yeah, and you have to give somebody the credit for going outside the box and pulling her in. Who I don't know
Right,
who it would be.
right. Well, I think that's also part of what's interesting is how many men really believed in the advancement of women and they believed in equality for women. Yet we don't hear a lot about those guys because we want to present history in this binary losers and winners fashion.
Yeah.
So it's much better to say all men were mean to girls and prevented us from having our property, our own checking accounts, our own credit cards, our own this, our own that. They beat us up if we weren't looking pretty or whatever it was. It's much simpler to communicate that message than there are a lot of women who are desperate to be equal. And there were lots of women who said, oh no, we don't want that. We don't want
So
that.
I have to tell you a story if you're up
Okay.
for that.
I'm up for a story.
So I used to be a manager in a technology company,
Yes.
and I was asked to take over this particular department. It happened to have been of all women. It was like nine or
Yes.
10 of them, actually.
So it's Sam and the
So,
gals.
yeah, yeah. And so, it was like my second or third day into the job, and I have
Hmm.
my door open and I'm, doing whatever I'm doing at the computer. And one of the women that worked for me was from Atlanta, Georgia, and she happened to have been up to work with some of her colleagues in my department. So she had this smirk on her face. She stands in front of my door with her hand on her hip with a big smile, and she goes, "So, Sam," she goes, "how does it feel to manage a whole department of women?" And I
Uh-huh.
sat back and I said to myself, "Wow, that's a loaded question." And, and I came up with a response that I thought was so appropriate. She loved it. She said, I said to her, I said, "Do you know what the body is for?" And she looked at me like, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Do you know what the body is for?" She goes, "I don't know what you're getting at." I said, "It's to carry the brain around." I said, "That's all I care about."
That's
And then
right.
she looked at me and she goes, "Good answer." And she walked
Right.
away. And that was the
Well
end of that.
played. Well played.
Wow. Wow. But my whole point is you're speaking to somebody who and I'm sure you have too. I mean, I've dealt with men and women in the workplace, and you have to judge people on what they accomplish, not what shell they're in.
Oh, absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely. And really it's it's such a shame that the word feminist isn't more closely aligned with the word humanist because it's really that. That's what it really is, you know, because we are all have that. I'd like to talk about when you were a younger person, like in the last, say, 3 decades, what was the most impactful community experience that you all had individually? Was it playing tennis? Was it on the road with a band? Was it you know, learning to sail, going to church or not, politics, maybe the 2016 election and wearing a pink hat.
So it's going to feel self-serving though to say.
I don't care.
So for me, the most meaningful community has been the one we're currently in, all four of us together, which is the writer's room. Before that, I would have said it was probably the Wolfer, from whence the writer's room came.
Mm-hmm.
But if I were to try to project backwards further in time, and not to sound like a sad child, the community was probably myself, because I moved around a lot and I had a
You're in a
lot of
community of one.
exactly.
Wow.
So,
Yeah.
but to have a community of, I mean, it was me, my mother, my younger sister,
Sure.
but mostly it was me with myself and my books.
Right.
And then there are the communities you're forced into, but the communities that I've chosen
Yeah.
would be the Wolfer and the writer's room.
Okay. What about you, Kit?
Well, it makes me think about these writing programs, writing workshops I've been to. So I
Mhm.
went to one, God, when was it? Maybe 86, up in Vermont with Pamela Painter. And out of that writer's workshop, that there was like 8 of us in there, I'd say like 4 of us are still in touch after all these years,
That's pretty good.
and still get together.
Right.
And then I did the Kenyon Review Writers Workshop. This was a while ago, and I studied under Nancy Zaffris there, who was an amazing teacher. Unfortunately, she's dead now, but she used to have students used to come back year after year. And it kind of reminded me of Brigadoon. It was like every August it would open up and
Right.
be this special place for 2 weeks, and then it would close down. But yeah, I think there's been a lot for the writing communities that have kept me going, and I just do absolutely love them.
Mm. All right, Miss Amy Turner, you're on.
Well, I think like Tulani, I felt a lot in my own space and as an outsider, and I was an only child, so even more insular. And I've definitely been in other writing groups and writing workshops, and they were great. I could feel kind of the potential for them. But to be fair, I think I also had to grow into myself enough to know where my right place would be in a community. And I was able to test that out with a geographical community, with the people that you kind of build as your family as you get older. And I think by the time I came to the Wolfer and the writer's room, I kind of knew myself enough. I felt secure enough in myself to know what I could contribute to a community and what I was looking for. And so, I mean, I would guess, I would agree that this has been by far the most deeply held community I've been part of. Like
Yeah.
the exchanges are so natural and invigorating, and help when we're down, help when we're up. And I think that's just as much as me growing into the person of who I could be in a community, as much as the right time to have a community be there to fill that void
Well,
too.
I wonder how much, like the kismet that occurred with the writer's room dot space, I wonder how much that had to do with the fact that we were cut off from the rest of the world for a period of that time. And that if we wanted to be together with others, it was very challenging how one would proceed with that. And also, when we wanted to be together with others, because of the nature of what had occurred, it made us much more discerning, I think, in terms of who we chose to be with, in those times. Certainly. My co-host Sam and I were talking, and he was talking about, for him, years ago, it had been doing community theater. And if any of you have ever had anything to do with community theater, there's an aspect of it that is complete craziness. But then there's another aspect of it when everyone comes together, where no one is more important than the other, and everyone needs each other in order to be successful. And I think there is a lot to be said for that. And I would think, Tulani, also the nature of your job, although you are apart from your performers, when you're together with your performers, I would think that there is a very much a camaraderie that is quite singular. Is that true?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what you've kind of touched upon is like having a common purpose.
Right.
And having something that is central to the community. And sometimes that's shorter term, so in the case of like a concert or a theatrical production,
Right.
That is finite. I think that those all have benefit. There are also the social communities that we have that are purposeful around work or around families or children or, religious organizations and such. But I think that the difference and the reason why the Wolfer, which was pre-pandemic, was really meaningful was that it was purpose-driven and it was really focused and intentional about who it was serving and what purpose it served. And so it was contained. And I think it's important for me in my brain to understand what lane this is in. And then it had offshoots and branches and it grew. And it was wonderful in that regard. The writer's room is also purpose-driven, but it's ongoing. And that's one of the beautiful things about writing. We can do it until we literally expire.
And we're all in our own experience.
We are.
don't have to partake of each other's experience because whatever we're producing is coming out from here and then going onto the screen or the page or whatever. That is absolutely true. Yeah.
And I think also many writers are extroverted introverts or just introverts. And so I think that and also a little bit crazy because why would you subject yourself to this?
Well, I think with every creative endeavor too, whether it's like musical theater, like you're talking about, or music or writing, we create a container to do that activity in. And the benefit of what we have is we've created this container as a community. So whether you're creating a container when you're alone, sitting at your desk and thinking about how you're going to do it, or you're doing it with other people, I think that's the thing we all like. We get the jazz from when we're creating with people or we're creating by ourselves is you've done it in this isolated container. And but it doesn't have to be. I mean, that's the beauty of community, is if you've structured the container to be fluid enough for everybody, then it, like Tulani says, it just goes on. It just exists. It's there every day. When we log on, we know that here's our time, here's our people that we get to create with each other. And we get that in microcosms when we go to workshops and when we go to, different weekends where we get to be away. But being able to have it in your everyday life is a rare thing. And usually I think as creators, we have to do it by ourselves. We have to figure out what the parameters of that container are. And, the writer's room gives us another way to do that with other people.
That's right. That's right. Kit, I think you should weigh in here because you're the smartest woman in the room. And I need you to say something now.
Well, I kind of feel like the writer's room, it's somewhat, I think Tulani has this gift for creating communities. And there's something about her that's very warm, opening, but exciting too. So I think she has this magnetism where people are attracted to her and want to join. And I think that helped to make this, to get us over the hump. Like, I think now everybody is contributing equally, but I think that we needed the Tulani seed to help us get going.
Well, certainly. And also when you build a community, what's so interesting is also the expand and contract dynamic. I mean, it's like there are a couple of different ingredients. One is the expand and contract because of people's commitments and other lives, their lives outside of this experience. And then also what's going on geopolitically. I mean, that sounds like an absurd expression, but it's true. And then we have the nature of call and response. I have found what's been really shocking to me is how much I thrive on the call and response that you get in a community, that you get in a space like the writer's room space, because while one is not necessarily sharing one's work, one is affirming the fact one is doing one's work because there are others pursuing the same endeavor. And that is so, it's such a positive reinforcement for every day that you look at some sorry ass story and say, well, what am I doing now? But it's just, it's really, I think it's really magical. So I think you should all share a little idea of what you're all working on at the moment, because we all have very different projects going. And I'll start, and then you'll go next, Amy, and then Tulani, and then Kit. And then you're all going to introduce the writer's room space and describe how a person might find us. So my projects at the moment, I have two things going. One is dusting off part of a manuscript that I put down. And so now I've decided that there's no reason why I shouldn't put it out there, because it's one of mine and I love it. And I think others might love it too, maybe just a little bit. And at the same time, I'm proceeding with a World War II story about an American in London who makes dreadful choices all through the war. But those are my kind of protagonists, the ones who make dreadful choices. Amy, what are you working on?
All right, I'm working on the revisions to A Garden of Shadows, which is the sequel to Voyage of the Pleiades, which just came out in June. So I'm kind of continuing to do the marketing on the first book while doing the revisions to the second book, with the hope that it'll be out early next year. And in between that, I'm trying to start playing with the ideas in my mind of where the third book is going to go, because I know that as soon as that second one starts making its way into the world, the third one's going to start rolling out too.
So your characters still have a lot to say.
Yeah, and I just have to decide where they're going to say it from.
That's great. That's great. Lonnie, what are you doing?
Yes, well, I'm praying second to final revisions of my first novel, which is called Force Majeure and is scheduled to come out next June on Fauve Press, as well as trying to select amongst my abandoned children projects which one will likely follow. So I think I'm in what they would call the convulsive state of finishing a project, and also trying to support Amy as we proceed into the holidays on how we can try and boost Voyage of the Pleiades, and of course with the writer's room, and being a fangirl to Kit and Amy and you and the rest of the writers. So
I want to add also that you and Amy started an organization called Fauve Press, Fauve Press, and that is an independent publishing arm of the writer's room space.
yes, thank you.
Right. So now it's my turn. I'm working on my first novel, which is a mystery novel, and I'm doing every permutation of first person, third person, present tense, past tense. And so somebody just said that I should be working, my next step will be second person omniscient, but I don't know if that will happen. And I am well on the way. I think the plot is somewhat solid, and now I just have to make it believable and finish it up. And in the meantime, I take a lot of workshops. So I just signed up for a humor writing workshop. So I'm trying to, for my assignment, which is due tomorrow, I have to come in with a first draft. So I'm trying to combine humpback whales with something else. And I'm not quite sure what that something else will be.
So long as it's funny, it doesn't matter, right?
That's what I'm hoping. Also, she said you don't have to bring in a polished piece, just bring in a few ideas and maybe the rest of the class will write it for you, which would be awesome.
So if you are watching us now and you identify as female and you are over a certain age, I'm not quite sure which age it is at the moment, but it's younger than I am, younger than Kit, younger than Tulani, and younger than Amy. Not much younger, we don't know, it's okay. It's for people who are over a certain age and are female. You can find us every afternoon at the writers room space. Please check us out. We'd love to see you there. Thank you very much. Thanks, ladies.